First of all, buy what you like. Don't buy to impress somebody. Buy something that puts a smile on your face.
Hi, I'm Maximilian Busse, founder of MB&F. To me, watchmaking is art with a capital A. Watchmaking is about kinetic sculptures. Watchmaking is, more importantly, a mindset. It's a journey. The history of watchmaking is filled with adventurers, dreamers, engineers, artists who will each in their own way contribute to a better world. The watchmaking journey is first and foremost about very special individuals. Some are rebels and mavericks, and most have a little touch of madness. Now, over the years, we've come to realize that many MB&F owners are adventurers themselves. Our collectors circle called The Tribe is full of such individuals. Many have amazing lives and stories to tell, and this is why I decided to start this podcast. Today, I'm glad to welcome one of them. Passionate about watchmaking, he turned his passion into a profession after a career as a lawyer. Also known for his expertise for vintage watches, he is now one of the most important auctioneers in the watch market. Alexandre Ghotbi, a warm welcome to Tales from the Tribe.
Max, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm delighted. I do have a bit of a imposter syndrome being here because your previous guests were saving lives and being creative and making films and investing in Google and being the first ones. I'm just a watch nut.
We're going to discover during this half an hour which goes on that you're way more than that. And I've had the privilege of knowing you for a better part of 20 years.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward to this talk. But before we get into your story, you currently work in auction rooms. There's a high level of stress, decision-making which has to happen quickly, minutes, seconds. Do you remember the last time a minute was crucial in your life?
Yes. When I was a kid, I was in the track team. I was very good in athletics, 100 meter, 200 meter, long jump. Those were my specialties. And I trained a lot to join a club and be able to compete, which I did. And believe me, in those moments, it was a tenth of a second, which was crucial, that either made you or broke you. So yeah, time can be split in very small particles, and each tiny little microsecond can make the difference.
I must admit, we've just finished the Olympics, and you have to start wondering at these people, these ladies, men, who spend years trying to shave off a tenth of a second, a hundredth of a second. That's dedication. And so is there a moment, the last time you remember, where time actually stood still?
That's actually quite an intense question, to be honest. And I think it was when my kids, my two sons, when they were born, and I think at that moment, time totally stood still because I was 100% in the moment. That was it. It was there and then. Nothing else. Imagine, in these films, you see this guy who's standing still and the world is just whirling by. That was me when my kids were born. The world was going by fast around me, but I was there, not moving. It was standing still.
I so understand that also. I remember when I had my first daughter in my hands, and I pretty much changed my life from there onwards. I mean, went to live into another city, 5,000 kilometers away, and all sorts of things, because I was a dad. So when you want to slow down or take your time, is there a place or an activity that you actually choose?
There's two activities where, once again, I'm totally focused on that activity. One is cooking. I love cooking and I'm totally focused. I don't know if I'm a good cook, but I enjoy it. And that really keeps me focused. Second is actually going to the gym, because I'm just focusing on what I'm doing at the time. And the place for me is the mountains. That is for me my happy place. Winter or summer, I totally cut. And I spend a couple of hours in the mountains. For me, it's the equivalent of having gone on vacation for a week.
Great. Actually, when I was preparing this interview, I realized I don't know much about your childhood. So maybe can you enlighten us a little bit on who is Alex Ghotbi, youngster or
as
child?
A kid.
Yeah.
You know that I'm Iranian. So I was born in Iran, lived there until I was 8. So we left in 79. So my childhood, which has been a very happy childhood, a very loving childhood. I split my childhood in two. One is the before, one is the after. When we left, there was definitely a sense of an ending. Things were never going to be the same, and they weren't. One family, all in the same place, and then everybody went to the US, to Europe, to Asia, etc. So there was a total split. But nevertheless, I think I had a very happy childhood. Actually, I'm one of those guys who actually had a fantastic teenage period. And I loved my teenage years. And I think that those teenage years, everything was amplified. Your friends are the best friends in the world. The music you listen to is the best music in the world. The parties you go to are the best parties. Your heartbreaks are the worst heartbreaks. So it was fantastic. I knock on wood, I loved my childhood and my teenagehood.
And what did you study?
In school or in college?
And then in college afterwards?
So in school, I was just regular grad school. And then I went to boarding school a bit in France. 2 years in a fantastic boarding school in Normandy. 2 years in a horrible military school because my parents thought that I was having way too much fun and I needed some discipline. So went to boarding school, got my French baccalaureate, my high school diploma, moved back to Paris and went to law school for 5 years.
And in the middle of all that, where does watchmaking enter, or when does it enter?
So watchmaking, I think my parents used to travel often to Switzerland, and every time they came back with a little gift, it was a watch, etc. But I think where it really blew up is with the arrival of the Swatch watch. It was 82 or 83. And these were the coolest watches in the world. There was color, there was design, and everybody in my class had a Swatch, and we used to just trade them. I remember when you were nervous, you nibbled on the straps, which is kind of gross when you think of it now, but it was a cool thing to do then. And that just opened a whole new world of, it wasn't watches for the sake of watchmaking, it was watches for design. And then little by little, I just liked it even more and started reading books and magazines, etc., and just fell deeply in love with this art form.
Do you remember which of your watches was the most meaningful, the first one, which sort of meant something?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you a story before that if you want. When I started working as a lawyer, I was having some interviews, and I didn't go to the firm that was paying the best or was the most prestigious, etc. It was the one where the partner I was interviewing with, every time I went, he had a different watch, and he had a very cool watch each time. And I still remember, and this is like the mid-90s, first time I saw him, he had a Breguet Tourbillon, then he had a Daytona, a vintage one, and there was a Cartier tank American. I'm like, this guy, I want to work with him. He has great taste in watches. I hated his guts, left after 6 months, but he had great watches. But I know that with my first salary revenue I had, I bought a Daniel Roth.
No way.
Yeah.
Your first beautiful watch was a Daniel Roth?
Yes, it was not a Rolex. It was not a Patek. It was a Daniel Roth in stainless steel with a salmon dial. It was a time only. I bought it secondhand because I couldn't afford it in first hand, and I loved that watch. And it was with me for many, many, many years.
Now everything explains. If your first beautiful watch was a Daniel Roth, well done. So, as we said early on, you went to practice law in a very big firm, and then you changed your whole career and started working for a very prestigious watch brand in Switzerland, and then you end up now at Philips Watches. You've had many lives. What's interesting is that you stop the career you basically signed up for and you go into watches. Can you take us through the different steps? What happened in your mind? How did that come upon?
So I have to say, I loved to being a lawyer. I enjoyed the adrenaline. I loved the job. I loved what I was doing. But I also loved watches. The way I got into watches was very indirect, and it wasn't what I was planning to. In the very early 2000s, actually 2001, I co-created a watch discussion forum called The Purists. Now it's called Purist Pro. This is the grandpa of social media. Social media did not exist
Purists
then.
was my family. I mean, thank you. I mean, all of us old watch fogies, we cut our teeth on Purists. That's where we could exchange with people as nutty as ourselves. It was extraordinary.
So that started off as just for fun. And I was moderating the Lange and the Vacheron Constantin forums. And was there for quite some time.
Did that take a lot of time of your
Basically,
life?
it took, every minute of my free time. So I was dedicated. And at the time, we had dial-in internet. So at home, basically nobody could call me at home because the phone line was constantly occupied. And then I met a watchmaker in Paris called Jean-Baptiste Viau, who was actually, he did restoration, mainly on Abraham Louis Breguet watches because he was working for Breguet at the time. A phenomenal guy, super intense, super intelligent. And he was thinking of launching his own watch brand. And we said, okay, let's do it together. You do the watches and I'll take care of your marketing and your finance and everything. But we had no money. And that's how we met. So I worked on a business plan and sent it out to some brands known to invest in young upcoming watchmakers. One was Chanel and one was Harry Winston, whom you were the CEO at the time.
In those days, yeah.
Exactly. This was in early 2000. And one day I was at the office and I get a call at 7:30. Pick up the phone and I hear, hi, this is Max Buser from Harry Winston, not from MB&F. I'm like, oh, yes, we're getting our financing and there we go. And for an hour and a half, you just sat there and tore my business plan apart, saying, you didn't think of this, you didn't think of that. These numbers are bold, these are good, you should do this. And, after you hung up, I was exhausted. I'm like, oh my God, this is not good. But you took the time to explain why. And that was the best
We hadn't
lesson.
met yet, have we?
We hadn't met. This was, I remember, in 2002.
Okay.
And then I came to Basel in 2003, and that's where you were launching the Opus 3.
Exactly.
That's how we met.
That's when we first met.
But I was still at the Purist then. And we started doing some consultancy for brands in client marketing and digital, because at the time, digital, they had no idea what the hell digital was. And their clients were only retailers, so they didn't know what the final client was. And little by little, I left the Purist and I created what was called the Our Lounge, which was a dedicated forum to Vacheron Constantin. And Vacheron, at one point, I told them, listen, I'm not going to do this anymore. My firm is sending me to New York to take over the New York office. So I'm going to stop. It's going to be too much work. And Vacheron said, would you come and work for us in Geneva? So I think it took me a second and a half to consider. I'm like, yep, you bet. This is my dream. I want to work in watches. And that's how I ended up. I took my first step.
So it was a second and a half, which made the difference.
Second and a half that made the difference. Exactly.
And so you arrive in Switzerland, wife and children,
yes,
and establish a whole new life here.
Yeah, I packed up everybody. We came. The kids were very young. A total new world. Even though I lived in Paris and everybody speaks French in Geneva, it was still a culture shock. The way people worked, the way people thought, the way they lived. But listen, I got my foot into watches. And, ever since, I'm not working. I'm just enjoying myself.
So what would you have done different today, looking back? Is there anything you would have done different to maybe get into the watch world before? Now, was it perfect timing? It just happened? It was karma?
The thing is, it's everything I did, all the mistakes, all the time I took, all the detours brought me to where I am today. And had I done things differently, maybe I would be somewhere totally different. So I don't think I would have done anything differently because I never had a plan. I never said, this is what I want to do. It just happened. It fell on my lap. Thanks to the universe, to karma, to whatever.
Incredible, a lot of work and dedication and passion and sharing that passion with people that you like around you. And it didn't happen by chance.
You know what? I guess. I don't know, but I wasn't expecting, because I had at one point sent out resumes to watch brands saying, guys, I have No experience in watches. My only experience is digital. Nothing. I never got a single response from anybody. I even remember once, I think early 2000s, SIHH fair in Geneva, went into a booth to see a brand. They asked us who we were. We said, oh, we work for, we're journalists on a forum. They kicked us out. They're like, we don't want internet people in this with us.
This is what, 20, 22 years ago. Huh?
This is in 2001 or two. Yeah.
Good grief. Yeah. Amazing. And so, are you scared of the fear of unknown? Or is it you just don't think about it? You just jump in?
I think with age, I've learned to embrace the unknown. When I was much younger, I always had a plan and everything was overthinking. Now, maybe too much, but I really depend on my gut feeling. And if it feels good, I say, let's give it a try.
It worked out pretty well to now.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about your work at Philips today. What do you do? What are your challenges? This is really interesting, I think, for all watch lovers.
So Philips, I'm the chairman for watches, and I'm heading the European and Middle East markets. So my job is very vast. I have a team to manage, and it goes from boring stuff like just doing HR and budgets and, things that you do. Fun stuff like strategy, communications, the social media around our sales, etc. And the really fun part is finding the watches, vetting the watches, examining pricing, putting them negotiating them, putting them in the sale, communicating around the sale, and then selling the watches. So it's a very, very vast. You do a bit of everything.
And so today in the auction world, what are the big challenges?
The big challenges are at every sale. One is finding watches, trying to guess what the market wants, giving the market what they want, being
but you
innovative.
Also specialize in finding pieces that nobody's expecting. Yeah. What the market wants is always the same stuff. You at Philips Geneva, you always manage to curate an auction where, even though I don't have the means, I'm like, oh God, I want this and I want that.
Our sales are a reflection of who we are. And we only take watches that we would like to buy ourselves. Now, there's some brands I really don't care about, but some of my colleagues love. So we put those. There's stuff that I love, my colleagues don't care about, but we still put it in. There is still a bit of guesswork. You can't say, you know what, we just want to bring things that are so niche and underground and we'll change the market. That's different. But it is true that you kind of try to guess what the market wants or what the market could want, even if they don't know it yet. I think we were quite successful with bringing a lot of the independents to the market.
Say, you spearheaded the independents in auction houses where all the other auction houses were not interested. And there was no market when you started.
No, we started in 2018 or 2019. But that just comes from my love of independence. And, every time we had like a great, incredible independent maker next to a Patek and a Lange, it's not systematically the same. And so nobody was paying attention. People were paying attention to what was sold before or after. So we try to educate a bit. We did exhibitions, non-selling exhibitions, books, presentations, etc. And I think we managed just to shine the light on a specific way on this market. So going back to your original question of what are the challenges, one of the challenges is, bringing things to the market that have not been seen before, being original, being innovative in the way you sell, in the way you market, and the way you present, and then also developing, because today the watch market is huge. The secondary watch market is incredible, and the watch market at auction is rather small. There's a lot to be had, and to convert the watch buyers into, coming to watches at auction. Auction can feel a bit overwhelming for those who don't know it, or maybe a bit, pompous at times. We want to show that no, actually buying it at auction can be quite fun.
Fun, approachable, and not that sort of ivory tower just for a few specialists, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Is it today more difficult to find pieces or clients?
It's a chicken and egg thing. If you have the right piece, you'll have the right clients. And if you don't have the right clients, you don't have the right piece. I think it's a bit of both. I think we have managed at Philips to show that we are capable of finding things that you've never seen and bring new clients to the table. And once these new clients come, they bring you watches that haven't been to the market or are very rare, etc. It's a bit of both. I think it takes a very, very long time to establish trust, because somebody who's going to give you the crown jewel of their collection, and all our collectors are not multi-billionaires. Somebody can have a great watch that they bought 30 years ago at a very decent price, and that today is worth millions, and they need to sell it to, fund their retirement, their kids' college, etc. So you need to build the trust. You need to show them that you're there for them, that you're helping them, but also you need to show the buyers that what you're selling is the real deal. You're not trying to just squeeze money out of them for one go. And trust takes a long time. But once you have it and you've developed it and you've obtained it, I think that goes a long way.
For sure. And you must have developed a lot of relationships. Amongst all those relationships, are there any encounters which have particularly impressed you?
I think there's a lot of people who started off as clients who have become friends, and they come from all walks of life. I would say the encounter that has had the most impact on my career actually is you.
Sorry?
Is you, Max Buser.
Okay.
Because it's thanks to you that I'm at Philips.
Okay. True.
Yeah. I mean, we were speaking years ago, and I said I wanted to go create my own business and do social media and CRM for brands. And then I know you called up Aurel saying, there's Alex who could be a good fit for you. And I knew Aurel professionally, but not more. And then he called me up, and there we are. And, 10 years before we had met the Opus, when you helped me, or you kind of destroyed my business plan, but it really helped me go forward. So I think, I'm not saying it because you're here, but at very important moments of my professional lives, there was some kind of encounter where you were involved. So you're my fairy godfather in watches.
You're Droopy, the guy behind the door is always there. Hello. Oh, thank you very much. Means a lot. Look, the auction world is pretty live wire. Are there any, what people want to hear about is anecdotes. Are there any specific auctions or occasions, things which you remember and you're like, wow, that was amazing?
I would say each auction is different because each auction is live. It's as if you're performing live and you have no idea what's going to happen. You have done your utmost to have the best catalog, to have marketed it. The client doesn't pick up the phone. You've lost a deal. The guy bought something that he wasn't planning on buying and he doesn't have the funds. I think there's two auctions that really impressed me. One was July 2020. This was right after COVID. Our auctions in Geneva are normally in May, and we pushed it. And I remember we were in confinement and everybody was wondering if they would still have a job in 2 weeks.
And that was your first digital auction, was it?
No, we've always had digital auctions, or you could bid digitally.
Yeah, but of course, there was no room in this case.
At this time, we decided, and we were the first, and we took the gamble to go and still do our auction with nobody in the room and only on the phone or online. And the bidding starts. First lot goes crazy amount. Second, at one point, we're just looking at each other in the room saying, what's happening? I mean, people are throwing money at us. And that was the COVID effect that we saw for 2 years, where it was just crazy. We came out of that thing drenched, but it was wow. And the second one, once again, it was the auction, which was just incredible, where we had basically a watch from every desirable watch in the world that nobody had ever seen was in that sale. We made $70 million. We broke the world record 3 times. For the second largest auction was like 40 million, something like that. It was just the passion of the people. It was no longer an auction. It was boxing match between collectors. It's like, you're not going to have it. I'm going to have it. it became a contest. And for us, it was great. For the sellers, it was great. And for the buyers at the end, it was still great, even if they paid a lot of money for a lot of watches. But a lot of these watches, they're crown jewels. So those were the two auctions that really impressed me in terms of the passion and the implication of just everybody. It was just like crazy. Like imagine you're in a boxing match and everybody's screaming and trying to get a piece of the cake.
We have been through 2-3 years of insane highs in our industry. What is a Philips auction in end of 24 compared to a Philips auction mid 21?
I think, and this is a great thing, is the collectors are back. At one point you had flippers or investors or whatever you want to call them, what they want to call themselves, who were just driving the market up because, people who didn't know, but they were just putting money in there to do God knows what. And that was not a healthy market. A healthy market is when prices make sense. And sometimes a 10 million franc watch does make sense. But at least, you have the real collectors who are there for the long term and not people who are there for a year or two and then disappear. And these guys were turning the real collectors away from watches. And that would be been very scary to know that these real collectors were now focusing on something else and not coming back. So 2024 is, I would say, we have to work much harder to get the same results, but it's a healthy market. And a healthy market, I rather, work 10 times more in a healthy market than just do nothing in a wavering market or something that doesn't make sense.
I so agree with you. Now, you don't only work at Philips. I know you're an incredible collector. That's how we met also, actually, when we were comparing watches. What's the common thread running through your career? The thing that really gets you going is vintage watches and contemporary independence. But how does that come together?
I think, and surprisingly, I was looking at my some watches the other day. I think I just have basically one watch which is like mainstream, which is a Royal Oak. Everything else is either vintage or independent. And I think both of them really do make sense because none of them are purely marketing driven, and they all have a story. Vintage watches, they tell the story of their era, they tell the story of their previous owners, they tell the story of watchmaking, and independence, they tell the story of their maker, the DNA of the man or woman behind them.
And the stories of all the hardship they've gone through to create that product, that brand. That's what I'll also try and share also with everybody, where they're like, why are you so passionate about independence? Is because when I wear one of my friend's watches, I know what he has gone through.
Yeah.
And it's been so tough up till recently, so tough for all of them. Now we've had these incredible last 3-4 years, but that's a cherry which we never expected. We were just expecting a very small cake.
What I love is like there's no push marketing. It's not like, oh, we need a green dial this year, we need a purple dial this year, we need to sell to the Chinese market. Oh, now we need to sell to the Middle Eastern market and let's put dragons and green and no, it is him, it is her. It's not some marketing team that decided this is what we should do. And that what really speaks to me.
So is that what gets your adrenaline going? I mean, if I look at your collection, you've got a very short taste, very eclectic. That's what I love. What sort of hits your fancy? What gets your adrenaline spiked?
It's a bit of everything. It needs to be vintage or independent. No offense to bigger brands. I'm not very excited about what's coming out of the modern stuff. But I do want the design to be specific. It needs to be to speak to me. And it could be classical or it can be kind of very quirky. The movement is very important. It needs to have something in it. I like seeing effort. Even if you can't see it, if some guys, really bust his head trying to figure out how to assemble, like your HM11, having this rotating architectural object. And that must not have been easy. Could have been easier not to have anything rotate. But I like the fact, not that I have one, I like the fact that you made the effort and you put the time. And I like the effort that somebody who's into more classical watchmaking puts in doing his anglage and finishing the under dial parts as well as the back, which is not visible, but who cares? So I like that effort. That is important to me. So design, movement, and no marketing, please. Thank you.
So when you arrived this afternoon, I saw what you're wearing on your wrist. I'm very flattered. Could you maybe just share it with auditors, and so that we can, well, that's French, auditeur, with the listeners, and tell us why you have that on your wrist?
So I love the horological machines, and this is the horological machine 5. First, it looks great, has a great movement. It took you a lot to create the case and to figure out how to do the prism where you have the reading on the side. And this is the perfect watch to go to a meeting, because nobody will see you looking at your watch. You know, just gently just look at your the side of your wrist and you see what time it is. So it's also a montre à tact.
Montre à tact, exactly. So you're right. So HM5 is arguably our biggest flop, arguably the watch which really didn't sell. And when people ask me what were your flops, I often speak of it. I love that piece. I don't care that it didn't sell. I mean, on the moment, of course I cared, because it made our life very difficult in 2012 when it came out. But it doesn't matter. It was a very, very difficult watch to come to life, as you said. A lot of technical issues, a lot of issues and everything, and crazy stories when we presented in Basel World, and our retailer Laurent Picciotto looks at me and I'm showing him how the flaps open and how it's completely watertight because it's got this titanium core. And he looks at me and says, yeah, but when water goes in, how does it get out? And I'm like, oh, damn, we didn't think of that. And so that's from there, we had the idea of having the 2 exhaust pipes at the back, exactly like a car. And that's thanks to Laurent, who actually pointed out at the year of the week of the presentation that we hadn't thought about it. There are all these incredible stories. And I find people who like our HM5 are, and I'm not saying that because you're here, they're very special human beings. So I've got a big fondness. So thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Well, you know, as an auction specialist, I can tell you what's selling today is all the flops of the past. So this could be
that's true.
Because they're rare.
I think the Royal Oak, when it came out, wasn't a big success. We all know that the Nautilus was not a success for decades. And there are many, many stories like that. Again, I wouldn't say that an HM5 is a legend or an icon, but I think today's icons were pieces which were so strong when they came out that most people didn't get it.
The Paul Newman Daytona.
Definitely.
From the 1960s. Nobody wanted it. And now it's the most identifiable watch in the world.
For sure. So you've got a beautiful collection that you've curated over the years. Any grail that you don't have?
I have a lot of grails I don't have, and I don't have them because I don't have the funds to get them. But I would definitely, in terms of vintage, I would love to have a 2499 Patek Philippe, or a 1518, which is the perpetual calendar chronograph, the original ones. The 1518 is from the 1940s and the 2499 from the 1950s. Absolutely gorgeous. They're the blueprint of what a perpetual calendar chronograph should look like. That I would love to have one. And in terms of modern independence, I would love to have one of these pocket watches, original pocket watches made by these early independent watchmakers like Journe or an Anderson or
Derek Pratt.
I was going to say Derek Pratt, Tourbillon. I would love to have one of those.
So beautiful. Yeah. Oh, great choice. So we've got the same grails. So now you're in contact with collectors on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
You help them curate their collection. What advice today in 2024 do you give? I know giving advice is a tricky one because it depends on every person you're speaking to, but generally, are there some basics you try and tell your customers?
Yeah, first of all, buy what you like. I mean, that's number one. And I think we saw a lot of buying for the wrong reasons in the past few years. Don't buy to impress somebody. Buy something that puts a smile on your face. Buy the best you can with the budget you have. It's always better to buy excellent quality Longines or vintage Omega, and you pay more than the market, but you get the best, rather than want to have a Paul Newman Daytona and bought a beaten up, over polished one that doesn't make sense. And if it's something you really want, just, save up for it. Save up for it for 10 years, and then you can get your grail. But yeah, just buy the best and buy what you want.
Love it. It's simple, huh?
It's very simple.
Any trends today that you can see emerging apart from independence?
The market keeps changing. It's a moving target. But the good thing is, at least I see it on the secondary market at auction, is for years, it was Patek, Rolex, and once in a while a bit of Vacheron, a bit of Breguet, a bit of Audemars, etc. Now the independents. But with the arrival of a much younger clientele and a broader clientele, because you have the Middle East, Southeast Asia, etc., which are coming in, the market has become very broad, and you see more. You see the traditional Patek and Rolex vintage, and then also you have the Cartier crash that everybody wants, and then you see a Christian Klings that 99.9% of the people have never heard of, which goes for a crazy amount. So I think that the trend today is basically people are looking for things that you don't find often, which are rare. Rare doesn't mean expensive. Rare can mean affordable, but rare can just mean that it's not something you go on Chrono 24 you find. It means that it's not like every 6 months there's another example coming to the auction. So I think there's a lot of people are looking for something that gives them individuality.
Yeah, makes sense. I have failed miserably offering watches to my wife. I keep on offering her watches which are quirky and weird and I find so cool. And she's very happy and never wears them. Any advice for people like me? How can I overcome that? Well, it's also because she actually doesn't wear watches generally. It's not that she doesn't only like my choices, but
you cannot be a abuser and not like watches. You have to
I'm
do something about that.
One.
Well, the good thing is you actually make her watches.
True. Also, yeah.
So that she has listen, I offer watches to friends. Well, I'll say mostly my children and kids of my friends. I'm trying to, get the next generation. Obviously not high value, some Kickstarters or some fun stuff. But, it's always good to have something on the wrist. But the people who get the most watches are my kids, because I think I've totally poisoned them and they love it and we discuss a lot. And then sometimes, I'm on Kickstarter. Instead of ordering one, I order 3. So we each get one. So it works on that side.
You have 2 sons. Do they have the same taste or are they different?
They're one is more quirky than the other. But, for the moment, they're happy. They wear what they receive. They're not blasé yet.
Let's have it that way for a long time. I'd written down a question. What's the most amazing thing you've ever done to pursue your watch collecting dream? Which is very broad, and I was thinking maybe you'll come up from somewhere I don't expect.
I think just working in watches is my watch collecting dream, because when I entered Vacheron, we had employee discounts. And now working at Philips, I work and I get to wear watches. I don't collect those watches we sell, but I get to wear watches that, people see in museums. People will, die just to have a glimpse of. So I think it's, I make less money now than as a lawyer. So if I wanted to just be in it for the money and buy the watches, I would have remained a lawyer. But now my watch collecting dream is just wearing the incredible pieces I see and then just dream about them a bit.
It's good not to be able to achieve all your grails, all your dreams. I find if you can actually afford everything, then where's the fun?
Exactly. You lose the spark. You can lose the spark.
It needs to hurt.
Yeah.
It needs to be difficult. Maybe you have to sell one of the pieces you love to get another one you love. I think maybe it's a Calvinistic thing that we need to suffer to be happy.
Exactly.
I think it's for me, it's important that you can't access things easily.
There needs to be an effort to appreciate.
Just to close on something, it's not only watches in your life. If I look at your Instagram, you have another passion, which we discover on your Instagram, is beautifully handmade, bespoke shoes. When did that start? When did you go down that rabbit hole?
You know what? Shoes, more or less the same time as watches.
Okay.
I think the shoes, obviously, at the time it was more sneakers or entry level. But as I grew older, and it's just a sense of the effort. I like the part, it's handmade. There's a bit of artisanal. There's dexterity. There's human genius. Nobody needs to wear a pair of shoes that takes 200 hours to make. But I like the fact that the guy made the effort. And I love Japanese shoemakers because they really go that extra mile. And if we have the time, I'll tell you a little story, which is, it hasn't happened to me, but I was speaking to a Japanese shoemaker who used to work for an English shoemaker. And there was a lot of Japanese who used to go to England and train and work and make bespoke shoes in the UK. And they all got kicked out.
What do you mean they got kicked out?
They were fired and they were not kept because they were too perfectionist.
And they would take so much longer.
Too much time to make a pair, and it did not make economical sense. So they all were sent back to Japan, but doesn't make economical sense. But they are masters, they are geniuses, they have dexterity, they have gold in their hands. And it's the same as watchmakers. I mean, there's an effort, and wearing something which somebody has put a lot of effort into, it brings me joy.
So you're in contact with these Japanese creators? Do they? So they speak English because they worked in
Google
the UK.
Translate does miracles, but some speak English.
Okay,
some don't. But it's like being in touch with independent watchmakers.
Any names you can?
My favorite is Yohei Fukuda.
Okay,
who very surprisingly a few weeks ago posted on his Instagram, "I'm not taking any more new orders."
I've heard that.
I'm like, okay, that sounds familiar in watches. There's Suzuki, there's Marquez, there's Tai. Japan is the land of incredible shoemakers.
And so they do only bespoke, or they do off the shelf?
They do off the shelf. They do made to measure. So basically, it's not bespoke, but you take existing lasts, as they call them. There's a bit of everything, but seriously, for somebody who's interested in shoes, please look at the Japanese guys. They're just phenomenal.
We should organize a Japan shoe tour where we could meet all these great creators.
Your next tribe.
Next tribe gathering.
Is in Tokyo. Count me in already.
That's a great idea. Alex, I really appreciate this wonderful time of sharing. Thank you so much for that. We've known each other for some time now, and your journey is a great reminder that nothing is written, that our wildest dreams await us, and that perseverance always ends up taking us where we belong. It's a great story. You're now one of the leading horological personalities in the world, and we have so much to learn from your love of watches.
Thank you very much, Max. It was a pleasure being here with you.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed our conversation with Alexandre Ghotbi and that you had a glimpse at his fascinating journey. We'll soon be back for a conversation with another of our tribe members. If you enjoyed today's episode, remember to subscribe to our podcast so as not to miss our next conversations. Stay curious, keep exploring, and cherish your madness.